I grew up in a place where the air was always thick with life. My home was near a small market, a place of vibrant chaos and constant energy. I can still close my eyes and see the bright, patterned cloth hanging in endless rows, dancing in the breeze like colorful flags. The sound was a symphony of negotiation, bargaining, laughing, and calling out to one another across the stalls. But the smell, that is what I remember most. The sweet, comforting aroma of fried plantain floated from a nearby cart. It was the smell that followed the sound of my mother calling my name for dinner. The nights there were warm, wrapping around you like a soft blanket. I remember sitting outside, feeling the gentle air on my skin, listening to the crickets start their nightly song. In those moments, leaving was not a thought in my mind. It was not a plan or even a dream. My world was this town, this market, this family. But as I grew older, I started to see the edges of my small world. The bus ride was the first step into a world that was no longer mine. We traveled for hours that stretched into days, watching the landscape transform outside the dusty window. The lush green fields of my home slowly gave way to dry, sprawling land under a sky that seemed to grow wider and wider with every mile. Inside the bus, a community of strangers formed. People slept with their heads against the glass, their bodies swaying with the motion of the vehicle. Others spoke in hushed tones, sharing snacks, sharing stories of where they were going and what they had left behind. A small child somewhere in the back hummed a familiar song, a tiny melody of innocence against the rumbling engine. The road was rough, and each jolt was a reminder that I was moving further and further away from everything I knew. At a border crossing, the journey paused. We all stepped out of the bus into the blinding sun and stood in a long, slow-moving line. The air was heavy with the smell of dust and hot engine oil, a scent of impatience and anxiety. When it was my turn, I walked up to the guard's window and handed him my papers. The hardest part of the journey was the sea. My arrival in Europe was like stepping onto a different planet. The first thing I noticed was the height of the buildings. They were giants of glass and steel that scraped the sky, so different from the low, familiar rooftops of my town. All the signs on the streets and the shop fronts were written in a language that looked like a secret code I could not decipher. The air itself smelled different. Car exhaust, rain on pavement, the faint scent of perfume from people rushing past. Cars moved with a speed and purpose that was both frightening and mesmerizing. The streets were immaculately clean. I felt incredibly small, a tiny lost piece in a massive, fast-moving machine. In that first week, I felt a deep, gnawing loneliness. I walked through crowds of people but felt completely alone. Everyone seemed to have a destination, a purpose in their stride. They walked with their heads down, their faces set, their minds already at the next meeting. I, on the other hand, was just drifting. I tried to blend in, to walk with the same confidence, but I knew I stood out. I learned to smile at people, a small offering of friendliness in a sea of indifference. Sometimes they smiled back, and that small connection was like a lifeline. I also learned the art of waiting in lines, waiting for answers, waiting for a sign of what to do next. And I learned to listen, to pick up the rhythm of the new language from conversations I overheard on the bus or in a cafe. The first days were a blur of searching and failing. I was looking for a job, any job. We became brothers in our struggle. At night, we cooked a simple pot of rice and talked about our day, sharing frustrations and small victories. After weeks of searching, a door finally opened. It was a small clothing shop on a quiet side street. The owner, an older man with kind eyes and a gentle smile, listened to me patiently. He must have seen something in my eyes. The desperation, maybe, or the determination. He gave me a chance. He hired me to sweep the floors. He hired me to unpack boxes. He hired me to keep the store tidy. He taught me how to fold sweaters and shirts into perfect, neat squares. He would point to items and say their names in the new language. I would repeat them until I got them right. I approached her nervously and, using the few words I knew, helped her find what she was looking for. She smiled at me, a genuine warm smile, and thanked me. At the end of that first week, the owner paid me. The coins he placed in my hand felt incredibly heavy. The first thing I did was send a small amount of money home to my mother. When I called my mother to tell her, I could hear the emotion in her voice. "Be careful," she said. "I am fine," I replied. In truth, I was not always fine. I was often tired. I was often lonely. But I felt a surge of pride. I had found work. I had earned my own money. I discovered a park where I could feel peace. I found a small bakery that sold bread so warm it melted in my mouth. I made friends, other immigrants who understood my journey. Our laughter filled the tiny room until our backs hurt. The small, faded photograph of my family is still with me. I keep it on the small table next to my bed, and it is the first thing I see when I wake up and the last thing I see before I sleep. It is my compass. When I feel lost or discouraged, I look at their faces and I remember why I started this journey. I write letters home, filling pages with descriptions of my new life, the weather, the food, the funny words I am learning. I call my mother every week. She tells me news from the market, who got married, whose baby was born. "Be patient," she always tells me. Her voice is my anchor. This journey has changed me in ways I never expected. I am someone who has been rebuilt, piece by piece. I learned a new way to speak, a new way to move through the world, a new way to be. I learned that fear and hope are not enemies. They can live together in the same heart, one fueling the other. A small act of kindness, a shared meal, a simple smile from a stranger can be enough to make a very big day. I do not know what the end of this story looks like. The future is still a long road with many turns I cannot see, but I feel like I know my next step. I will keep learning. I will continue to work hard, to save and to study. I want to build a better life, not just for myself, but for the family I left behind. I will send more money home, and one day, I will go back. Not because I have failed, but because I have succeeded.